Gracie Jiu-Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 26 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. We have a great show today. Going to be speaking with Steve Maxwell, who is a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt, as well as a world-renowned fitness and health expert. So let's start with our jiu-jitsu quote. What is a champion but a guy that didn't quit? Life is a continuous experience. You only fail by not learning. And that's from Master Rleson Gracie, and a great quote indeed. So the interview today is a little longer than most of them, so I want to get right to it. Steve Maxwell, as I said, is a world-renowned fitness and health strength and conditioning specialist. He's known the world over for his knowledge and insight, as well as his long history in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So let's meet him now. My guest today is Steve Maxwell, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and known the world over as a strength conditioning coach and fitness guru. So thank you for being with me, Steve.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
All right. So you seem to live a very interesting life. You're currently down in Sydney, Australia. Is that correct?
I am. I'm glad to report that Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is alive and well in the land of Oz down under.
Awesome. So what took you down there? Just teaching jiu-jitsu and fitness or something else?
Well, I had spent an entire winter about 4 years ago in Scandinavia. And I spent the first part of the winter in Toronto and then in Ottawa. And it was freaking cold. And then it went from cold to colder. I went to Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And I spent the entire winter there. And then I went to Iceland towards spring. And, you know, Iceland's always cold. And it was brutal. And, of course, there was no light. And it was pretty dark and depressing. You know? And I said to my young assistant, I said to her, Tracy, I'm never doing this again. This is it, man. I have a freedom business that I can live anywhere in the world that I wish. So I Googled sunniest place on earth. And Sydney, Australia came up in the search.
Oh, that's great.
And I says, you know what? I've never been. let's just go there next winter and just kind of chill a little bit. And I just came here without knowing anyone and having any connections. I did have a few Australian clients. I make my living doing online diet programs, strength and conditioning programs, and even just lifestyle programs for people. And we came here, and then next thing you know, people were jumping out of the woodwork. Hey, would you come over here to my school and teach? Or, hey, I have an opportunity to host you for a seminar. Would you be interested? And lo and behold, I have a pretty nice little following down here in Australia. And, of course, nice. I love the crazy Aussies, you know. They're awesome people, very friendly.
Right on. Well, how cool that you not only are warm, but also that you have this freedom to travel all over the place, anywhere you want to go and meet new people and help empower them and have an effect on their lives. That's awesome.
Well, it wasn't always that way. You know, I did my time in the trenches like everybody else. I was a school teacher and a physical education instructor, teacher, coached wrestling for a number of years. And then, of course, I got into the gym, adult fitness business, and ran several gyms before opening my own dream gym in 1990 with my ex-wife, DC Maxwell. And I started the first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school on the Eastern Seaboard, way before Rleson Gracie. That was back in the days when Craig Cocox was still around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I knew Craig quite well. In fact, he even taught at my new school, my newly formed school. And it was considered the first Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy outside of Torrance. So I worked like a freaking animal. I mean, it was not unusual for me to spend 12, 14-hour days sometimes. And you always work harder for yourself than you do for the other guy. So
certainly.
You know, I worked like for many, many years, both as a fitness trainer and running a business with over 11 employees that worked for me. And, you know, teaching the first Gracie Jiu-Jitsu classes on the eastern part of the United States.
Wow. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you were Rleson Gracie's first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, or at least in the States?
That's correct. You know, it all started out back in the day when I first started Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in 1989. It was one big happy family. And this was just prior to when Rorion moved from his garage to the new Gracie Academy in Carson. Mm-hmm. And I came in just about that time. So I was thrilled. You know, everybody was there. You know, Hickson, Hoyler, Master Elio was there quite a bit. You know, Henner and Halleck and Hiron were like just little babies almost. You know, just tiny little kids, and it was fantastic. And a short time after I started going to the Gracie Academy, they started the Gracie Instructor Training Program. And I was the very first person in the United States to be certified by the Gracie family to teach Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Wow.
And,
incredible.
You know, I had, you know, graduate degree in health and physical education, and I had taken many courses, a lot of fitness workshops, and I consider the education I got at the Gracie Academy to be probably one of the best in my entire life. The Gracies really set themselves apart from the rest of the jiu-jitsu world, not in what they do. Everybody knows jiu-jitsu. The holds are the same. And there's people that are, let's put it this way. In certain games, there's people way better than the Gracies themselves. There are. You know, right. when we play the current tournament rules, there's some really unbelievable dudes out there, you know. So a lot of people know jiu-jitsu. But I'll tell you, it's been my experience that most don't know how to teach at all. They don't know what to teach. They have no rhyme or reason to the teaching. They have no plan, no lesson plans. It's a horrible way to teach beginners.
They hope somebody catches it, right?
And they hope, the cream always rises. No matter how crappy the program and how poor the teacher, you're always going to have those guys that have a knack for it, and they can learn it quickly, and they can perform the moves, and they're going to be your tough go-to guys. But I'll tell you, it's not the way to teach. And for every guy that you get that's like that tournament winner or that tough guy, you're going to have like 10 guys that get discouraged and quit because they just can't get it. Or even worse, they get hurt. They quit
So
because
true.
they're hurt, not because they even want to. And it's all comes back to the way you teach. And there is no finer teachers of jiu-jitsu in the world than the Gracie family. And I'm really happy to see that Elio's grandsons, Horian's boys, are doing such a fantastic job. It's very thrilling to see what's going on, you know. But, yeah.
I have to agree with their instruction is like none other, and they have a saying. They have a saying: teach to the lowest common denominator, and really break it down, to where anybody can understand it.
That's absolutely true. And it's really interesting because, as you know, after I started there at the Gracie family, the divorces started happening. You know what I mean? I liken it to being a kid. Do I go with mom or do I go with dad?
Right.
And the Gracies, as fantastic a family as they are, they also have their dysfunctions, like a lot of families.
Every family does, right?
Kind of like my family.
Yeah, for sure.
You got that dysfunctional uncle, and you got that weird aunt. Well,
right.
It was kind of like they kind of made you make some hard choices sometimes, because you got to be pretty friendly with a number of the people, and all of a sudden you can't train with this guy anymore, or he's not with us anymore. He's not, and it's like, well, what are you going to do, man? So sometimes some hard choices are made, and I did end up getting my brown belt from both Horian and Hoyce when I won the Pan Ams as a purple belt, and was very proud to wear that belt. But a short time thereafter, right after Hoyce lost in Copacabana to Vlici, Ishmael, I decided to go with Rleson Gracie at that time, who I had known for a long time. He and Horian had been in business for a while, and there's a big rift between the brothers, and it was just so hard, because they're all so good. So I went with Uncle Rleson, as my son Zach used to call him. and I was his first American black belt. And that was given to me in Honolulu in November of the year 2000. I think they had me listed someplace as 2001, but that's not true. It was the year 2000. I remember it very clearly.
I bet.
They had that ritual of making you go through the gauntlet where everybody beats you. And everyone on the islands were so excited because he had never given a black belt, and most guys thought he was never going to give a black belt. So when old Steve Maxwell, age 48, gets a black belt, it gave hope to everybody. They're saying, oh, my God, well, I guess, sort of like if Steve can do it, anyone can do it, right?
There's hope for all of us.
Yeah,
right?
There's hope for all of us. So, man, there must have been like 120 guys show up to Rleson's tiny little academy there in Honolulu. And, dude, I took a beating, man. They really knew how to twist those belts and wrap them and give you a whop. And I walked through a gauntlet that snaked up and down the mat. And,
man.
Wow, was I sore on the plane going back. My ribs and my butt and my hamstrings and thighs, man.
I bet.
I just
sore but happy, right?
And took the beat. Took the beat, man.
Wow.
But
sore but happy.
High times. But there was a lot of things going on, and it's unfortunate because I did fall away from the Gracie family. There was some controversies between my wife and the Gracies, and she was basically running my academy at the time. Her name was DC Maxwell, and was, I believe, the third American woman to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And she got that directly from Saulo Ribeiro, and proved herself by going down at the tender age of 50, I believe she was, and took a bronze medal in the Young People's Worlds down at the old Tijuca Tennis Club there in Rio de Janeiro. And
wow, outstanding.
Yeah, fighting girls she was older than their mothers, and she showed that, hey, I am a legitimate black belt, competitive black belt. So that was kudos for her. So
wow, well, that certainly says a lot about her for sure. Let's talk about your competition just a little bit. You certainly had quite a background yourself, starting with wrestling, very extensive background in wrestling, and then I believe you continued that into the Army. and then got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition and won several high-level Pan Ams and world gold medals. Is that correct?
Well, the cool thing, yeah, that is correct. The cool thing about Jiu-Jitsu is it's, the age group and belt and weights are very clearly delineated, so that even if you are a master or senior, and of course in Jiu-Jitsu it's very confusing because a senior competitor in most sports is just like, the young guys. But in Jiu-Jitsu, senior means you're, over the age of 35. But at any rate, yeah, it's pretty fair competition. What could be fairer than fighting somebody your weight, your belt, your rank? I mean, that's pretty good. And so you can extend your athletic career if you like. And of course, being a former NCAA Division I wrestler, I always had that desire for competition. It's just something I did. But
absolutely,
after graduating from college and coaching wrestling, what does a guy do with that wrestling? It's not convenient to go to universities and continue to wrestle. At that time, they had just started Foxcatcher, and my college wrestling coach was one of the coaches there at Foxcatcher. That movie just came out. That
right.
whole crazy thing with DuPont and the Schultz brothers and so forth. And,
yeah.
But it was very inconvenient for me to get there. I was a working man at that point. I had a child and a family and a business. So, you can't just take off at 3 p.m. every day to go to the local university to train what they do. And Foxcatcher was far away. So I was looking for that hole in my life to replace wrestling. And I looked and looked. I tried Muay Thai. I tried, karate, various forms, kung fu, all these different striking arts. And I realized I wasn't a striker. I pretty much sucked at those things, man. And plus, I didn't like getting hit. And I didn't particularly enjoy hitting people either. But I sure loved grappling. And just around 89, I discovered Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I had read this article in Playboy magazine by Horian that got everyone all riled up. And
right.
I went to the first seminar they had on the East Coast, and man, I said to Horian at that time, I said, hey, what do I need to do to learn this? And not only do I want to learn it, but I'd like to teach it because I think it's that good. And he said, hey, there's only one game in town. It's Torrance. And that's true at that time. And I started making sojourns out there, stayed for a week, 2 weeks. I had money saved up, and I used that money to fund my education in jiu-jitsu. And I would, in those days, private lessons were $100. And I would take like $1,000 and get at least 10 lessons. And then, of course, a lot of times Horian would just allow me to go to all of the classes for free. So I would just binge on jiu-jitsu for like a week or 2 weeks. And then I came back, and at that time I had my own gym. And I had mats set up, and I just called my old wrestling buddies. There was the judo club not too far. There was a Aikido school across the street. So, I would get these guys to come in here, and I would try out these new techniques and these new holds. And, of course, being a wrestler, I was pretty familiar with grappling. And
right.
I was able to practice until my next trip out to Torrance.
That's great.
Then I got the bright idea, hey, wait a second. Why don't I just bring those guys here? It's actually cheaper in the long run. So my wife was a genius. My ex-wife was a genius with setting up seminars. Man, we made these guys a lot of money. Literally thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars we made them with some of the first seminars in the East Coast. Atlantic City, we used to fill a room with like 80 guys, And, of course, anytime Horian was giving a seminar or Hoyes, anywhere, on the East Coast, I would either drive or fly there and participate. And, you had mentioned something earlier, like how it always comes back to basics. Well, there was, and about the teaching, it was amazing how much I picked up on not just moves, but like how to teach the moves, how to present the moves. And, they were always evolving and coming up with better and better ways of doing things. So it just gave me new ideas and how not only like details that I was maybe missing in the move, but also better ways to teach. So it was very educational, even though those seminars were pretty basic. It was incredibly educational. There was never once that I didn't come back feeling like it wasn't time well spent.
Wow. Well, you certainly were a man on a mission. You were going to get your feel one way or another. So I applaud your dedication and willing to do whatever it takes to get where it was and absorb it all. That's really great.
Well, people that are attracted to things like jiu-jitsu and grappling, or let's just say martial arts in general, they're extremists. They have extremist personalities because you wouldn't even do an art like that. I mean, think about it. What do? Well, we go out there and we try to hurt the other guy as much as possible by squeezing or stretching his joints and limbs until he basically says uncle, by tapping or making, a loud noise, scream, hopefully not, And, of course, we choke the guy to sleep, basically, right? Choke the person until they pass out. That's jiu-jitsu. And that's the hobby for a lot of guys. So I think it takes an extremist personality to do that. Now, that being said, it sounds pretty horrible when you put it that way, but I had way worse injuries in NCAA wrestling and high school wrestling than I ever have in jiu-jitsu. Mostly because you can always tap and submit, whereas in wrestling, if you get in a bad position, you can't tap,
Right.
And even though wrestling is supposed to protect your joints, it's much, much rougher, much harder on your body than jiu-jitsu ever was. And I'm finding that even in my early 60s now, I can still get on the mat and roll around. And, hey, if I get tired, I just tap. If something feels uncomfortable, I tap. The secret, to longevity in the sport is tap early and tap often.
I really love hearing that from someone who has a few years. I do too, so I can say that. But you're a true inspiration as an athlete that's getting a bit older, but really maintaining health, vitality, fitness, and love for jiu-jitsu. There was an article on your website, I think it was called Jiu-Jitsu and the Mature Athlete. Really loved that. So anybody listening who hasn't been to Steve's site, I urge you to go for many reasons, but definitely check out that article. It just has such great insight for us that are getting a bit older but still want to be into jiu-jitsu that much.
Well, I liken it, like if you go in it with the proper attitude, and I really like the keep it playful attitude. I mean, that doesn't mean that you don't up the ante now and again and, push the envelope a little bit, But, sometimes it's fun just to go, And
absolutely.
So it doesn't mean that you just lie there and just let people crawl all over you. You do what you can do. But playing a good defensive game is almost as much fun as being on top, working for the submissions. Being able to trick a guy or escape from a hold or survive a precarious position, especially if the guy's younger, bigger, stronger, But a lot of fun. And
absolutely.
You can have a lot of fun just playing all different aspects of the game. Towards the end, Rleson Gracie loved to just have you mount him. I spent time with him up in the ranch. I spent almost a month one time training with him and his son Hoyce. Of course, Hoyler was there, and it was pretty awesome. And I would train and get a private lesson with Elio, and he would just basically lay in the ground and let you mount him, and then just that, he'd just kind of dare you to do anything to him. And, if you started using a lot of power, he would let you know, hey, you're doing jiu-jitsu, you're just trying to overpower me, try to trick me. And we would play that game, and he was damn near 90 years old when that was going on. And it was really a lot of fun.
That's
and
great.
You realize that he knew what you're going to do even before you're going to do it. It was almost like he could just read your body language and your movement and pretty much discern what your intentions were. And it was pretty amazing demonstration of knowledge. And I do believe that even in his 90s, as far as from a self ability to defend oneself, it would have been really hard to do something to him, man. Truly.
That's incredible.
That's the beauty of that particular martial art.
I've heard that a similar story from so many people where he would just lay down and have you mount him and tell you to do something. But I never get tired of hearing it because it's just so cool that someone at that age just has that awareness and that keen insight and, the ability to know what you're going to do and just deal with it. So it's great.
He was pretty spry. He really was. And I loved his lifestyle up there on the ranch in Terrazopolis. He had like a farm, and he was pretty self-contained. He had a pond that we used to go jumping off this big old high pier, and it was very deep. We would jump maybe, I don't know how many meters it was. It probably seemed really high, maybe like 8 meters. And that seems like a long way up when you're standing there on the edge of that little board. But he would fish out of that pond. It's a freshwater pond that was stream fed, and he stocked it with his own fish. So he'd have fish for dinner. He kept chickens, so he had eggs, and they're pretty much vegetarian, but occasionally they would kill a chicken and have a fresh chicken. He had a herd of cows, and he would milk those cows every day and bring fresh, raw, unpasteurized milk. And he knew I liked raw milk, and he'd give me almost a liter of fresh milk. I mean, still frothy from the cows. Nice. I could even tell what those cows were eating. Whether they were into the clover or into the grass. I mean, you could just taste it in the milk.
Man.
And then people talk about this acai. Well, most of the acai sold in America or in Europe is basically just sugar, frozen sugar.
Yeah.
It's not really acai. He would go out and pick acai off the trees. And in the natural state, it's pretty sour. It's bitter. It's not particularly tasty. But he would juice it and make fresh acai juice mixed with some other stuff, and put a little honey in there for sweetener. And my God, it was just unbelievable.
Good stuff.
Made his own raw cheese. I mean, the guy was basically self-contained.
That's really great. That's awesome. Awesome. And thanks for sharing those stories. I love hearing those. So I want to hear more about your fitness philosophies and health, but before we leave the jiu-jitsu, I want to ask you about your son, Zach. He's certainly a well-accomplished jiu-jitsu practitioner in his own right, and you've got to be really proud of him. And what kind of influence would you say you were able to be in his jiu-jitsu journey?
Well, pretty much the reason why he's even doing it. I started him. I mean, in some ways, sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice because, sometimes when you bring a kid up a particular way, it's almost like they have no choice but to do something. And he started as a fetus, basically. and from the time he was an infant, I was rolling around and playing with him and turning him upside down and holding him by one leg and throwing him up in the air. There's a very interesting book that was done by Bruce Weber. He was a very famous photographer in the U.S., and he's gay, and he was totally in love with Rleson Gracie. And he did Rio de Janeiro, and it was a big picture book. And it showed all these marvelous pictures of the Gracie family with young Hickson, young Horan, young Helson, throwing the babies high into the air and tossing them between the uncles. Right. And I had read some Russian research where they did very similar stuff, including dousing babies in ice-cold water. And it builds a toughness and an amazing immune system, and it builds a fearlessness in the child.
Interesting.
One of the definite drawbacks to teaching jiu-jitsu to children, but adults too, is the basic human fear of falling. Most human beings fear the dark, fear tight enclosed spaces. Some people fear open spaces, fear of heights, and fear of falling. They're the basic human fears. And overcoming the fear of falling is very difficult. And I travel all over the world. I like to work out in parks and playgrounds because I like to be independent of gyms. I do bodyweight stuff. And everywhere in the world, I don't even have to know the language, but I know what's being said. You hear well-meaning but misguided mothers, sometimes fathers, saying something, look out, get down from there. Oh, you're going to get hurt. Oh, my God, watch out, you're going to fall. You're going to fall. And they put this fear in the subconscious mind of the child.
That's so true.
And the kid grows up very fearful, thinking, oh, my God, falling's the worst thing in the world. in reality, most kids, when they fall, they just bounce. Maybe they cry. And a lot of it depends on your reaction. If you just don't pay much attention,
right,
and just like kind of look away, the kid a lot of times will just keep on playing. But if you make like a, big exclamation,
right.
a lot of times the kid, man, he'll start crying right away. And I never did that with Zach. He was taught to be fearless from a young age, which I think really helped build his confidence. And as a child growing up in Philadelphia, we were only a few blocks from the projects, which were public housing. And the kids who grew up in the projects were pretty tough kids. And a lot of them learned early street survival skills. They knew that running in a group gave them a lot of power. So, a lot of times you'd see 3 to 10 walking in groups. And, if you're going to fight one, you're going to fight them all. And believe me, Zach had so many fights when he was in Philly. And thank God for Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, because I'll tell you something. He became the most feared kid in his school. Not because he started fights or because he's a bully, because he was known to be a fight ender. He would end those fights. And sometimes the fights ended pretty bad for the guy that started up. And he just got this amazing reputation to the point everyone was afraid of him. And rightfully so, because, he just didn't take any crap. He was taught from an early age to stand up for himself. And, he got suspended from school a few times because, that zero tolerance policy, they don't really look at what caused it or who started it. They just throw everybody involved out. So, he had his share of suspensions. But you know what? I never punished him for fighting in school.
Nah, I don't blame you a bit.
And you know what? That all the things that they teach in that bully-proof program, he learned all that stuff from the time he was just the tiniest little kid. And, it served him well. And then, of course, it was a natural progression to go into the tournament scene. And from the time he was like 7 years old to the time he was 14 years old, about a 7-year stretch, he never lost a single match, ever.
Wow. Incredible.
It was a lot of pressure.
Incredible.
A lot of pressure. It was a point where he wanted to quit jiu-jitsu because I started him early. And the more he won, the more he felt like it would just be too humiliating to lose. And there was a point where he just didn't want to do it anymore. And that's when I brought a young Hedges Lebre, who was Saulo Ibeiro's first black belt. Hedges was a fantastic teacher and coach, and a lot of people don't know Hedges. It looks like Regis, but Saulo was the prodigy of Rleson Gracie at Umaita, and Hedges was Saulo's right-hand man when he first started his jiu-jitsu business, when he had Rleson's blessing to open up his own school. And I met Hedges in Brazil training for the world and liked him so much and was so impressed with his teaching and his technique. And then I found out later that he was responsible for a lot of Rleson Gracie's early teaching, that Hickson had personally asked Hedges to be a mentor and coach to Rleson because he was going through some difficulties of his own and just didn't have the time to spend with Rleson. So Hedges was very instrumental in Rleson's development. And, of course, I realized that at a certain point, it was best for me to step back and let someone else take over Zach's training. And then Hedges stepped in and really developed him into an elite world-class black belt competitor.
Incredible. Well, kudos for you for that insight that, you take him to a certain level, a certain distance, and maybe it's best at one point to bring someone else in just for the different dynamic and for maybe alleviate some of the pressure or for whatever. It was just a smart call. So
well, there's a lot of emotional stuff tied in with training your own children sometimes.
Certainly.
I think I was getting a little bit too emotionally invested myself. And even though you try your best not to be, it just comes out subconsciously. And the kids who are really sensitive, and Zach was certainly a sensitive boy, he picked that right up, and he like a lot of sons with fathers, you don't want to let dad down, and so I just realized, wow, I just need to let someone else just take over the scene, and of course Hedges' pedigree in competition was just fantastic. I mean, the guy, guy's an amazing teacher, and he's running Gracie San Diego. It's Hoyler's affiliated with the school, but of course Hoyler's like me. I think he travels as much as I do.
Let's talk a little bit about conditioning, fitness, and eating right and diet tips. When you talk about fitness or movement, give us some of your philosophy or your insight. Do you like yoga, Pilates, other things? What do you think of gymnastica, natural, etc.?
Well, all these things can be useful, but the most important thing is you got to start with your own basic health. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, comes down to breath work. Most people don't breathe properly. They breathe, either mouth breathe or they breathe into their upper chest. And the upper lobes of your lungs are the emergency area of the chest that should only be used during real serious life-threatening situations. And a lot of people, because the amount of sitting they do, they've lost the ability to diaphragmatically breathe, and they're using the emergency breathing apparatus of the neck, the shoulders. It's called clavicular breathing, and they never really draw the oxygen down into the lower lobes of the lungs, which have the calming nerve receptors, the parasympathetic nervous system. Mm-hmm. They're always breathing in a stressed out state. And people wonder why they can sit at a desk all day and just be so exhausted. It's because they're breathing with their emergency muscles, and they're creating sort of hypervigilance, overadrenalization. So it's very exhausting to be in this state. And it causes a lot of emotional things going on. People like really touchy, easy to anger or easy to insult. I mean, it's like the average corporate office worker, They're constantly stressed, always feeling crappy, and a lot of it is their breath is off. So you got to start with the breath. And it's really interesting, but Master Rleson Gracie now teaches like the first hour of all the seminars breath work. And it's something that they never did. I learned it
That's great.
When I was in Moscow. I went to the Summit of the Breath Masters. It's a martial art. It's based on breath work that was used by the Russian Special Forces, Special Ops guys, Spetsnaz, KGB. And I had learned it there, but it was interesting. It was the same exact stuff that the Gracies had been doing all this time, but they just weren't teaching it. I always thought maybe it was some kind of little family secret or something, And then the second step is once you get your breath work done, you got to make sure that you have your basic movement patterns. It makes no sense to me at all for a guy who's in his 40s or late 30s, who's been sitting in a desk for 10 or 15 years, significantly overweight, high blood pressure, can't breathe, and can't even do a basic full squat without his heels coming up off the floor, or has horrible posture, forward head, kyphosis. Do you know what I mean by that? Kyphosis is like that hump.
Over-rounded.
Like real
back,
rounded upper back. And
the shoulders are coming forward.
And your head is sticking way out.
Yeah.
Like the person's head enters the room like 3 seconds before the rest of the body. Well,
right.
How the hell do those people expect to learn a combat martial art like jiu-jitsu? Doesn't it make sense that they would get their breath work and their movement patterns correct first? So I think it's really important for people to address their movement deficiencies and their postural malformations and get the posture looking good and get their movement pattern. You should be able to squat flat-footed, ass to your ankles. If you can't do that, you probably shouldn't even be on the mat. You should be able to do full push-ups. You should be able to hang and do full chin-ups and pull-ups. If you can't do these things, then you're just going to get yourself hurt. Now, that being said, I have seen some remarkable transformations of people going in pretty immobile and lose a lot of weight and end up, being pretty decent in jiu-jitsu. But I would say they're the minority. Most of the guys come in and get hurt, and then they just quit. So I think that a person is kidding themselves if they think they can go into a combat martial art and totally unfit and with poor movement patterns. And I often thought that it would be a really good, kind of have like a pre-jiu-jitsu kind of type training in some schools where people come in and just do basic motor patterning work, cross-crawl movement patterns to kind of get that brain fired up. And the human brain is such an amazing organism and so amazingly efficient that any movement patterns that you don't use on a regular basis, your brain pretty much shuts it down. You see these old people basically barely ambulatory, having trouble walking. You wonder, wow, what happened, man? That used to be like a young girl running around the playground, And look, she can barely move. And you ever notice that a lot of these people, their body is in the shape of a chair? Yep. It's sitting. Sitting makes your brain literally shut down all non-essential movement patterns, and people literally sit for hours. They get up and sit at the breakfast table. Then they sit in the car or the train or the plane to go to work. Then they sit all day at the desk. Then they sit at the lunch table. Then they sit at the desk. Then they go home and sit at the dinner table or plop down in their easy chair or sit at their desk playing around on the computer, answering emails. And then they lay down in bed for hopefully a good 8 hours sleep, but a lot of people don't. And no wonder they become immobile. So aging isn't so much some mysterious cellular thing that happens. It's basically disuse, atrophy of the muscles, and the fact that these people literally forget how to move. They don't move, so therefore they forget how to move. And even as something as simple that we take for such granted as walking, they lose the skill of walking to the point where their body ends up in the shape of a chair. Mm-hmm. Think of chair sitting as the new smoking.
Wow, that's an interesting way to put it. And it's not even just sitting, but a lot of the chairs that we sit in these days, like a lot of the couches and the furnitures that people have in their homes are these very slinky, make you sink down. Your knees are a lot higher than your waist and everything, and just contributes to the chronic shortening of the hip flexors. And along with, like you said, the shallow breathing and all that, it just is a mess on people's posture. And
well, let's put it this way. Natural man is born, every baby actually is born diaphragmatic breathing in through the nose. Just about the age of school, when you start formal schooling with children, they start to lose it. You can see it even in kids. A lot of kids with their little video games and sit. Mm-hmm. Now, you have to sit. I mean, obviously, you can't be on your feet all day. So I recommend that people sit on the floor. And there's 10 archetypal human postures, and it does much less damage than sitting in chairs all the time. And the other good thing about the floor is you have to get down to the floor and get up. I don't know about my parents are pretty aged now. I think my mom's like almost 79 and my dad's like 88. And I truly believe my mother couldn't get down to the floor and back up. I don't believe she could. She's pretty immobile from just all the years of sitting. And but that's most people's parents or grandparents. And getting up and down off the floor is a fantastic workout in itself. And we were speaking of falling earlier. If you want a great workout sometime, people talk about cardio. There is no such thing as cardio, by the way. Cardio is specific to the activity. So, walking cardio is different than running cardio. And running cardio is way different than jiu-jitsu cardio.
That's for sure.
And the best cardio, of course, is for jiu-jitsu is doing jiu-jitsu, wrestling, rolling. But you can do some of course, general exercise where you're not resting between movements, just going from move to move. What a fantastic metabolic cardio conditioning that is. But just try this next time. If you're out in the grass or you can do it in mats, do 100 break falls. Forward, backward, sideways. Do 100 and walk around in between each one. And count it and see what happens to your heart rate. And tell me if it's not the best workout, one of the best cardio workouts you've ever had. Plus, you just get very relaxed with falling. Because,
that's great.
If you think about self-defense, right, is, for sure, usually little guys don't go around attacking giant guys. It's usually giant guys attack little guys. And for sure, the guy's going to make you fall at some point. He's going to hit you, kick you, push you, shove you, grab you. And even with jiu-jitsu skills, you're probably going to fall at some point, maybe with him, maybe without him. But the ability to fall repeatedly without hurting yourself is absolutely essential. And I do recommend that people learn how to fall on a hard surface. You start on mats or grass, or sand. But eventually you got to be able to fall on concrete, and you have to be able to do it well. And I recommend that people roll around the hard floor at home. Just start in your knees, just doing forward and backward rolls, and see where the hot spots are. And you learn to angle yourself in such a way that you don't have any bones actually contacting the floor. Just keep it all soft tissue, and go super slow-mo. And before you know it, you can just roll around pretty effortlessly, and you can even take standing falls with no injury whatsoever.
Wow, that's really cool. I would love to develop that ability. I think I will.
Well, just start.
Certainly start doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you can even use it as a warm-up before your regular workouts. Just do like 5 minutes of forward rolls and backward rolls, just on the hard floor. And then, each session over the weeks, as you get more and more confident, and it feels okay, and you don't feel like you're hitting any hard bone surface area in the ground, start to take it up. Maybe do it from your knees, or do it from one knee, and then do it from a crouch, and then eventually you just do it from your feet. And you can do it slow motion. You don't have to do it fast. Just build up the motor skills and the reflex and the skill of doing it. And when you start to do a bunch in succession, wow, what a great workout. And next time you're on holiday and you want to keep your jiu-jitsu conditioning up, man, just do 100 break falls. I'd say maybe even 50, man. And you can liberally throw in push-ups and pull-ups and some bodyweight squats in there and have an unbelievable, very jiu-jitsu specific style workout.
Well, I've done I would say complete workout, but I've done a series where I've just done get up and base, and then you get back down to your on the ground and get up and base a bunch of times, and that got my heart working pretty well. So I can imagine if we throw in the break falls, that would be quite a good workout.
And you can always crawl around on the floor. You can do commando crawls in your stomach, which is a great way to reduce kyphosis. By lifting your head and chest, crawl creep like a baby. Start crawling around on your hands and knees like a baby, and then lift your knees just a couple inches off the floor. Some people call it a leopard crawl. Then let the knees flare out and do Spider-Man crawls. Then elbow escape. Then, are you familiar with the leg thread where you bridge and you take one leg under the other? Sort of like
yes.
Yeah, do that. Stand up and base. Do a few break falls, man. Just keep a flow going.
Yeah,
and
all natural movements.
You could have a fantastic, very jiu-jitsu grappling-specific workout right in your own living room. And does it replace a lot of grappling? Of course not. But it certainly gives you the ability to maintain movement. And when you can't get on the mat, and when you are busy, or you are traveling, or you are on vacation, or whatever, or even working around an injury that doesn't allow live grappling, you can keep your movement base extremely good. And you do not have to follow programmed movement patterns like yoga, gymnastic natural, or Pilates.
Okay.
You can you just flow. You could do reps. You could just mix and match. Throw some shoulder rolls, across the back.
Right.
Bridge, and then roll into the plow position, in yoga, and then go back to the bridge. Just all sorts of fun things.
That sounds great. I like the whole flow aspect. I'm definitely motivated to add this.
Yeah, and if you know takedowns or throws, you could simulate shadow wrestling, The great Dan Gable, one of the greatest wrestlers ever. I'm amazed at the young kids that don't know who Dan Gable was.
Oh, wow.
For those that don't know, I'd say Google him, but he's the only wrestler to go through the Olympics unscored on in the Munich Olympics. He went through and won a gold medal against the best wrestlers in the world and had no points scored against him.
Yes, he is.
Now, that's pretty
legend.
That's badass. Anyway,
sure.
he was famous for his shadow wrestling. He would just see an imaginary opponent and just go through his takedown drill. So you can do that by yourself. So, not being able to get to class doesn't necessarily mean you have to let your skill set erode. You can still keep it pretty high. Now, all this being said, none of this replaces proper strength training. And one of the biggest mistakes I see people making is using explosive, fast movement patterns with their strength. There's this idea that you need to move fast to be fast in the mat. Nothing could be further from the truth. You do not need to perform your exercises in a plyometric fashion or explosive repetitions or Olympic weightlifting in order to be fast in the mat. You get very good at throwing weight around, but it does not translate into making you faster doing other non-specific activities, such as a double leg takedown or such as a throw. And it's one of the biggest sources of injury that I see in a lot of these young kids. Bouncing bench presses and bouncing, doing hopper deadlifts. And of course, don't even get me started with CrossFit, man. There's zero rhyme or reason to that.
We could spend a whole interview on that one, right?
I wrote a blog on that, so if you want to read my opinions on CrossFit, but they're well founded. I've been training for 52 years, since I've been 10 years old. I'm 62. So I've actually been working out for more than a half a century. And believe me, I've tried everything, man. And just take it from a guy that's been there, done it. Explosive training does not make you faster than the mat. If you want to get really explosive in throws or takedowns, you got to do those throws and takedowns fast and explosive. And using rubber bands and all that and trying to simulate the skills, big mistake, man. Very, very big mistake. Now, some guys will claim, but I improved so much or I got great results. What they don't realize is any strength training that makes you stronger will give you some results. That's not to say, though, that the way they did it was the best way to do it. There may have been 10 better ways to do it. And unfortunately, many people are ruined by their success. They'll have success with a particular system, and then that's it. They won't explore anything else. And it's a big mistake. It's a big mistake. They assume that just because they did Olympic weightlifting and set a high school javelin throw record, that's the best. Olympic lifting is the be-all, end-all. It's not. There was any number of ways that you could train in a safer, more efficient manner and still set that high school javelin record or whatever, Right. So the idea that you can selectively recruit fast twitch muscle fibers by moving explosively, it's never been proven. There's no real evidence to support that notion. But, it's one of those big controversies that people get in screaming, almost fisticuffs over,
Sure. Well, another area of all this that we could definitely spend complete podcast episodes on, speak for hours about, is the eating. But if you can condense it down to a shortened version, give us your basic philosophy on how eating fits into health and some do's and don'ts for that.
Well, if you're fat, you're eating too much. Simple as that. If you can't see your abdominals, at least in that line, you're too fat.
Uh-huh.
You don't have to look like the cover of Men's Health. No one ever said that's healthy either. It's most of those, I call it bodybuilding light, those fitness models, they diet for weeks, and then they Photoshop photos. So, most of the guys on the covers of Men's Fitness, Men's Health, it's all fakery. It's all, movie magic. Right. But that being said, if you are fat, if you have a gut and you have big old love handles and breasts that rival your wife, you're doing something wrong. You're eating too much. You got to cut it down. And one of the best ways to not overeat is to combine your foods. I've followed very closely the Gracie food combining. I've also read Dr. Herbert M. Sheldon's food combining principles. I've read Dr. Hay and Dr. John Tilden. These were physicians that treated people for incurable diseases with fasting and diet. And there's a lot of different food combining principles, but basically the best thing is to eat as few foods as possible per meal, and a fruit-based meal, a starch-based meal, and a protein and vegetable-based meal are your three basics. Don't eat protein and starch together. It's not a good idea. That means no sandwiches. If you want a sandwich, have a salad sandwich. Vegetables and starches, fine. Vegetables and protein, fine. Fruit pretty much by themselves. Occasionally you can have some nuts with fruit or maybe dairy if you tolerate it with fruit. And if you're excessively fat, it'd be a good idea to get rid of the starches for a few months and just eat basically fruit protein meal, protein vegetable meal, and then a fruit only meal. And this whole concept that fruit will make you fat or the sugars in the fruit or the fructose is such bullshit. because there's so much fiber and nutrients and cell salts in fruits. Your body digests it fairly slow. And keep the meals very simple. And just don't be eating every couple hours. You just are in a chronic state of digestion, which is very enervating and exhausting. And most all ills and even degenerative disease come back to basic eating patterns. There's not some, mysterious thing that happens to people that they get cancers or arthritis and all that. It all comes back to your ability to digest and break down your nutrients in your food. And there's no magic diets. There's no magic foods. It's just basic eating. God put everything man needs on this earth, just like every animal on the planet, right, has everything they need to be healthy and strong. Well, man does too. You don't need any superfoods. You don't need acai bowls. You don't need any of this stuff. And in fact, I looked up the nutrient density, and I found that the plain old American plum is just as nutritious as any acai. So, people get these crazy ideas, and it's all about sales and all that. And those young guys, you do not need to pound protein. You do not need post-workout shakes and all that stuff. It's all been disproven. The people that started all those rumors in the first place were guys that are selling protein powders. I guarantee it, man. So
absolutely.
You just don't need it. You just eat like a natural man, And I think the paleo people have some good ideas, but you don't need to get too faddish about it. I tolerate gluten just fine. I don't eat it a lot. Most people with gluten problems or intolerances were just overate it. They just were eating way too much and mixing it with all sorts of stuff. So, I don't have any problem with dairy, but I just don't overeat any one thing.
So keep it basic and simple and don't overeat.
And eat light. Use the 80% rule. The oldest living people in the world as a population are the Icarians in Greece, seconded by the Okinawans. And in scientific studies where they look very closely at their habits, they found that they undereat. They systematically undereat. The Okinawans actually have a word for it. They call it the 80% rule. And basically they never eat till they're full, and they never eat till they're completely satisfied. They leave the table feeling like, I could eat a little bit more. And that's a great rule, and I follow that all the time. I always leave the table feeling like I want a little bit more. But
that is a great rule.
And then the hunger just goes away. A lot of hunger, basically, if you want to know the truth, is pretty much boredom. People just get bored.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And then we have plenty of commercials to remind us that we're hungry and to stimulate that, right?
They sure do, man. And, it's really shocking, too, because when you go in a lot of these countries that I travel in, the supermarkets are really small, and there's pretty limited choice. And, man, you go to an American supermarket, I've been with, people from third worlds the first time they go to the American supermarket, and they just –
their eyes just bulge.
It's like, what the – I mean, sometimes the cereal aisle, just the cereal section alone in the average supermarket is bigger than the entire supermarket in a lot of the countries that I go to.
Yeah.
Crazy,
wow.
Man.
Well, good information for sure. One other thing before we bring it to a close, tell us something about yourself that most people might be surprised to learn about you.
Well, I'm basically just like a little kid. I learned a long time ago that part of anti-aging is don't think like old people. I don't like to be around people my own age. I like to think like, that's one reason I like getting on the mat and teaching. I like to be around young guys, it keeps you in touch with what's going on. And so a lot of people don't realize I'm pretty much just like a little kid. I still enjoy stuff. Like I went and saw this Australian movie called Paper Planes. It's about a little boy that won the world championship in paper airplane design. It was just a fantastic, wonderful, sweet movie. I got a ream of paper, and I was flying paper airplanes out of the apartment. Just checked out on Google all these designs, and I had a blast just messing around with paper and throwing it out and watching the wind carry my paper planes. Of course, I guess I was guilty of littering, but it sure was fun, man. And I still like to mess around like that. So I'm pretty much just a happy-go-lucky kid, and I intend to stay that way. This whole idea, of grow up and act your age.
Act your age.
Who the hell wants to act your age? And what is that anyway? And what is growing up? I mean, most of the grown-ups I knew as a kid were really unhappy, grumpy, upset. They hated their jobs. They hated their lives. They hated going to work. They complained bitterly, and I thought, man, I never want to do that. I'm going to find something I really like doing. Even if it's not that much money, at least I like doing it. And,
that's right.
I knew from an early age I love, the physical world and physical education and teaching and stuff and doing it. And, I've been able to take my avocation and make it my vocation and, pretty much turned it into what I call a freedom business because
I love how you say that.
Well, most of a lot of the work I do is online communication. I have clients all over the world. I do diet programs, fat loss programs, conditioning programs for every sport you can think of, from rugby to cricket to soccer to jiu-jitsu to even a couple MMA. But most of my clients are pretty much just like regular businessmen and women just wanting to either regain their health or keep their health. And I have a lot of different programs and fantastic videos also, downloadable videos you can buy off my site. And, it enables me to go and just live wherever the heck I want to. And I guess I don't know whether you know, I'm pretty minimalist. I don't own anything. I have no keys to any lock other than the apartment I'm renting right now. I have no car. I have no storage space, no storage bin with crap all loaded up. I basically have one bag, the Tom Bean Aeronaut 45 liter. You can look it up online, one of the best bags, BIHN. And that's the bag I carry. And a little man purse with my iPad, a couple things. And that's everything I own in this world, pretty much in one bag.
Wow, that's true freedom there, my friend.
Have ye will travel.
Exactly. Awesome. So give us your website and also tell us real quickly about your Maui seminar coming up in March, I believe.
The website is maxwellsc.com. The SC stands for Strength and Conditioning, maxwellsc.com. I have tons of really cool downloadable videos that you can just we send you the link and you can download onto your laptop or your iPad or your iPhone. A few phone apps also. You can take it out to the park and train. I'm really big on, freedom. So freedom from the gym as well. You don't need a gym to get great workouts. And the Maui seminar is basically a lifestyle training camp. I go over my health regimens and routines, anti-aging. We work a lot on the breath. I teach people different walking breath ladders and breathing ladders. I go extensively into the Russian Slavic joint mobility system. I do some Taoist yoga, which is the Chinese ancient health system. And we also do goal setting there at the Maui camp. A lot of people have no clue what it is that they want. So obviously the training's all over the place. So we actually set some concrete goals, both short-term and long-term, realistic, sustainable goals for their training and their lifestyle. And each person, when they leave, is going to have a plan of action, an actual workout that they help construct. And, people are going to leave feeling enriched, enlightened, and hopefully recharged to go back home and start with their new plans. So, it's going to be
fantastic.
I'm excited.
And you couldn't pick a nicer place to do it, for sure.
Yeah, and Luis Herrera there, that runs Maui Jiu-Jitsu, fantastic instructor, one of the first Rleson Gracie black belts, and still teaches the old Gracie style. And so for anyone that's looking for a great vacation, man, go to Maui and look up Luis.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm certainly an admirer of yours, a fan for all that you do and all the ways you're touching lives and contributing to the world. So thank you, my friend. Much respect and long life.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate being able to get my word out. Thanks.
Okay, time for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. Promise yourself to be so strong that nothing can disturb your peace of mind. Look at the sunny side of everything and make your optimism come true. Think only of the best, work only for the best, and expect only the best. Forget the mistakes of the past and press on to the greater achievements of the future. Give so much time to the improvement of yourself that you have no time to criticize others. Live in the faith that the whole world is on your side so long as you are true to the best that is in you. And that's from Christian Larson. And that's going to do it for this episode of the show. As always, thanks for listening. I really appreciate everyone that's listening. I appreciate the feedback. If you'd like to leave a comment, you can go to the website at www.graciejujitsurocks.com and leave a comment there. You can also leave a comment as well as rate the show on iTunes. As always, please help us spread the word. You can repost our posts, like us on Facebook and Twitter. And again, do let us know what you like about the show and thoughts for improvement as well. Thanks again for listening, and as always, this is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.